Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowery.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Just do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowery. I'm an exercise physiology and sports nutrition professor of a long time, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
And this is Phil Stevens. I'm strength coach at Strength Yield, and I compete in powerlifting, Highland Games, and whatever else they throw my way.
Also for a long time.
For a long time, yes.
This is Dr. Mike T. Nelson. I've been in college for a long time in the past. Staying with that theme. Owner of Extreme Human Performance, a faculty member at the Carrig Institute, and creator of the Flex Diet certification, which goes live again this coming Monday.
Sweet. Okay.
Yeah.
Mike, if you ever want to, we could put a little audio clip in the like mid-show when that's live and hot and happening or whatever, you know. So
Yeah, I can get one done for you. That'd be awesome. I'd appreciate that.
Okay. Everyone, we are going to have an episode with just us today, but then behind the scenes, you guys won't see it this week, but we're going to reconnect with Dr. Ruscio about gut health and some things people can do, lifters can do specifically, you know, action item type things. We just confirmed, Phil and I did, with Captain Kirk. Him and Marty Gallagher are going to be on, so that'll be a fun one. So some guests coming up, but today we are just going to discuss direct arm work. Now, I know we've discussed making stubborn arms grow just maybe 2 months ago, but this is a little bit different. I just want to talk about why would different strength athletes, and since Phil does all of the above, why would they do direct arm work? You know, I've actually heard some people say that they don't even do direct arm work. I think it might have been Chad Waterbury years ago making a comment that I think he, at the time, he wasn't even doing direct arm work. And I'm like, maybe that's the bodybuilder part of my mentality, but I can't imagine not doing some direct work at some point in a workout, at least once a week. But then that's me. So we will discuss that after the break. News.
Strength and muscle sport news.
This first bit of news, Mike, I think you beat me to the punch on this one. You had mentioned about cortisol and hormonal timing and how it can affect fat gain.
Yeah.
So I got my usual update from Nature, and a lot of our listeners realize these are the big leagues, right? Nature is like the Earth's premier science journal, arguably. And this is from their physiology subsection, brand new. I mean, this is literally, at least I got the update just within a week. It says, why fat piles on when the body's daily cycles are in disarray. Timing of hormone fluctuations influences fat cell development. So it says changes in the patterns of hormone production might cause weight gain when circadian rhythms are disrupted. And again, Mike already touched on this. It's just there might be a few more details here. Hormones called glucocorticoids, right? A lot of athletes fear cortisol because of its muscle degrading potential, but they also stimulate the production of mature fat cells. Probably differentiation from like pre-adipocytes for you biology people. In humans, glucocorticoid levels naturally rise in the morning and fall in the evening, but stress can also elevate them. And if you're unfamiliar, for about the first 3 hours that you're awake, your cortisol levels are really quite high. That's natural, up and down sort of rhythm that you probably actually want. Let's see. To study how glucocorticoid levels relate to weight gain, Mary Teruel, Teruel, at Stanford, and her colleagues injected mice with glucocorticoids at various times during the day, but fed them the same amount of food. Long story short, mice given the hormone late in their wakeful phase gained weight. Mice injected just after they woke up, when their glucocorticoids naturally were already high, did not gain weight. and, the sort of deleterious effects on their fat cells. The results suggest that high glucocorticoid levels at unusual times of the day could contribute to weight gain. This could help express why stress and disrupted sleep cycles are linked to rising body weight. So it's, and then the sub-reference is Cell Metabolism 2018. This is further evidence to me that whole chronobiology trend, about it's not just how much you eat or what you eat, but when could matter. And then this is sort of supportive of that on the hormonal mechanism side. There's a very cool picture I actually saved for the classroom. It shows little precursor fat cells, little baby pre-adipocytes that don't really store fats and oils like, full-blown mature fat cells. And it shows them lying amongst these fully grown fat cells, and you can literally see the little oil droplets in them. It's a really cool sort of, histology pic here. But I don't know. It just, to me, that it emphasizes that it's too simple to say a calorie is a calorie, because they fed these animals the same amount of food, the same amount of energy, the same amount of everything. And the ones who had the stress hormone late in the day got fatter. So a lot of this has to do, I think, with like partitioning effects, right? I mean, what are we trying to do in our sport so often is partition nutrients toward muscle tissue, not toward fat. And hormones, I always tell like the doc students, hormones control the show, right? So you're doing differential diagnosis. You're like, I'm stuck. What is going on? Always at least think about what's going on with their hormones, because it can have a lot of effect on those sorts of things. But like I said, credit to Mike on that one, though. That's a follow-up. I just saw some of the names of the researchers and whatnot. So I don't know how we would turn that into something practical. We would have to really guess, right, sort of extrapolate those findings, but try not to get stressed out emotionally at night, that kind of thing. You might want to back off on the stimulants late in your wake cycle, because those can not just cause adrenaline production, right, epinephrine, but also probably stimulate your adrenals to make, cortisol and things like that. I don't know, Mike.
Yeah, one thing I've done with clients too is, it's anecdotal at this point, but even moving a few more of their carbohydrates to the evening, if they get kind of more stressed around that point, because they tend to make not the greatest food choices then, tends to be more a social situation. And then I've often wondered, especially on this study too, that insulin's kind of the opposite of cortisol, if that may help blunt maybe some of that cortisol response a little bit too.
Yeah, it's sort of a catch-22. I've wrestled with that myself, because if carbohydrates, right, like if you look at them during stressful exercise, they reduce cortisol levels, right? So like the sport drink benefit. And yet at the same time, if your cortisol levels are very high, you might be somewhat carbohydrate resistant. So you're almost like trying to treat the emotional side of it, or like you said, blunt some of those counter-regulatory hormones with the insulin. But it's at a time when you're not supremely carbohydrate sensitive. I guess in our population, though, we're always at least reasonably carb tolerant, compared to the average Joe.
Yeah. So, a lot of those studies, were done on people who are not exercising also.
Right.
So
Yeah. Next, I actually just got this morning from Kelly. Energy drink consumption linked to anxiety, depression, and stress in young adults. So it's sort of related topic here. This is from Michelle Simmons. Now, the write-up is just from a lay pub, naturalnews.com. But they're talking about an Australian study. So here we go. The study was carried out by a team of researchers from the University of Western Australia who looked at longitudinal links. That's interesting to me, right? Instead of just doing the snapshot cross-sectional thing, they tracked them across time. Longitudinal links between energy drink consumption and the symptoms of anxiety, depression, and stress in young adults. And then it just goes on to say, of course, energy drinks have a combination of possible ingredients: caffeine, which is sort of central, sugar, taurine, ginseng, guarana, which again, stimulant in nature, the guarana, B vitamins, and herbal extracts. And again, stimulant in nature, usually those herbal extracts. According to the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health at the NIH, energy drinks are the second most popular dietary supplement consumed by young adults in America, multivitamins being the first. Moreover, males aged 18 to 34 drink the most energy drinks. I don't find that surprising. This study involved 1,000 participants. They completed some self-report questionnaires. It looks like they tracked them over 2 years. The way this is written is a little bit hard to understand, but it says the research team then used linear regression analysis to see whether the energy drinks were related to depression. Let's see, on the Depression Anxiety Stress Scale 21, the DASS 21. So it looks like they're using a replicable, validated instrument for this. And the idea with linear regression, for people who aren't familiar, what they're trying to do is see what factors load very heavily, in this case on their dependent variable, right, which is like depression and anxiety, because there's going to be other things that can cause depression or anxiety, and then that you could kind of correct for them. So they try to correct for their social, like socioeconomic demographics, their lifestyle factors, their physical activity levels, their drug and alcohol use, their diet, their body mass index, right, their weight for height. So after they adjusted for some of these potential confounders, the results showed that switching from a non-energy drink to an energy drink across a 2-year follow-up period was linked to an increase in DASS, depression, anxiety, and stress scores in men. On the other hand, there were no significant links found in women. So again, I found that interesting that women seem to be less negatively impacted when it comes to depression, anxiety from the energy drinks, and yet it's the guys who are hit harder by it as far as side effects that are seeking it. So, not very good news, I suppose, when it comes to some of these energy drinks. I would again, I'm extrapolating to pre-workout powders and pills and whatnot, but I got to think there's a lot of those same ingredients are in pre-workout kind of supplements. So I guess that would be the downside. I don't know why it's really surprising to think the anxiety part, right? If you jack your fight or flight hormones sky high, if you don't go to the gym and kind of burn it off in some level, you're going to end up with some anxiety, problems with sleep or whatever, and that could lead to depression and whatnot. But anyway, it looked like a new study on this from Australia.
Yeah, and I think I was able to track that one down. It looks like it's a 2017 study, because the link in that article sends you to another link, which you then have to look for the actual, actual
I
study
did not.
where it was published.
Right, this time.
Yeah, and so for people listening, they can look for the new JISSN updated position stand on caffeine that will probably have some stuff on energy drinks in it also. They'll be out hopefully later this year, since I was one of the people helping work on that. So
yeah, I'm excited to look at that. My obvious interest in coffee.
Yeah.
I've moved away from energy drinks. When I was in Minnesota, right, I was looking at Redline and some of those really strong energy drinks. And since I moved toward coffee, I know it sounds hippy dippy, but there seems to be a lot of healthy stuff in coffee, that could counteract some of the usual problems with large amounts of stimulants, like from energy drinks. Again, I say hippy dippy, but I'm trying not to use the word natural because that gets abused so badly. As far as coffee being a better choice. But Phil, you still go for the occasional energy drink, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one usually just Saturdays. So other than that, it's coffee. But even I've curbed down my coffee a lot. I'm only having caffeine maybe a couple days a week. So
wow.
Yeah, me and Mike were talking about this. My wife went off of it because she was having some heart palpitation issues, and now we've since found out it wasn't that, but now we're pretty used to not being caffeinated. So
right.
So we're drinking a lot of decaf, and it's like, well, why go back if I'm doing okay? Then I can just use it on training days and when I need it.
I think that's the key. Yeah, selective use. Yeah. This past week I did the same thing. I was drinking decaf. I stumbled across some local, really good stuff, and it's decaf, but it's good stuff. And I thought, I'm going to drink that throughout the morning because usually I find when I'm in front of a classroom, if you're in front of between 15 and 50 people, you kind of have to be on your game anyway. So I found, what am I doing reaching for the caffeine? And Mike, it might have been you, I think a year or two ago, we were talking about how when under emotional stress or social stress, men go for the caffeine and the coffee whereas women don't as much. And that seems ironic that we would do that, right? When we're under this sort of situation, we reach for, I'm thinking it's probably the dopaminergic effects of the coffee. You know, it's somehow soothing and stimulating. But honestly, if you're already in that anxiety-inducing scenario, what are you doing reaching for more caffeinated coffee? You know, so anyway.
Yeah, I always track my amount of caffeine, just an approximate, in my training journal. I've probably done that for like 5 years now, and I'll see it kind of cycle up, and usually like sleep, is going down and things like that. And then I'll try to plot out, okay, I've got, 2 more days of this project that's due, and then try to do the inverse, try to go very, very low on caffeine for the next couple days. And I usually try to take like 1 to 2 weeks a year where I don't have any caffeine at all. And every time I do that, it's crazy how much more I sleep. And I think I don't realize, even though I'm a fast metabolizer of caffeine, if you have some even at, say, 3 in the afternoon, that's still going to be floating around in your bloodstream. The half-life is, you're going to still have some there. And it doesn't seem to be enough that you feel. But I noticed I sleep a lot longer once I cycle off of caffeine.
Yeah. Now, have you noticed, I know you track HRV. Do your HRV values drop when you're drinking lots of caffeine?
They do, and it's interesting. Initially they don't, but if it continues, then they do, which is always hard to sort out because maybe it's the sleep loss, or maybe it's the change in perception that I feel like I've had good sleep, but maybe I haven't. Because my sleep number usually goes down, and then So the other part I find that's interesting is that HRV usually correlates more to sleep debt than acute sleep loss. So I think it's looking more at those kind of build up of stressors. Because if you get one night with not too much sleep and you're not in a sleep debt, you can be okay. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but you can be okay. But if you're in a sleep debt and then you keep doing that, and then you start adding stimulants and stuff on top of it, then I definitely see a big drop at that point.
I'm curious because I've got 2 sort of superstar students wrapping up some pilot work on that. If you remember, we were looking at steps per day and HRV and just a whole host of things, and just trying to look at their diet logs and seeing what kind of correlations we can find. And they are wrapping up, the data entry like literally as we speak. So I'm hoping by May I'll be able to tell listeners sort of what we're seeing in the lab in that way. I know for a fact that stimulants will drive down your heart rate variability, of course, because, there are things like Adderall that you can notice, like, will just crush,
It crushes it.
Yeah, yeah. And, I mean, I actually saw that once. I'm like, wow, like, coffee is nothing compared to something like that. I mean, that's, it's amphetamine, for God's sake. Of course it's going to put you on sympathetic overdrive, but...
Yeah, I've seen that in 4 people now over the past 6 years, and I didn't catch it at first. We went through the whole list, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Pretty active person, healthy lifestyle, blah, blah, blah. And I asked them for like the 3rd time, I said, are you sure you're not on any other medication? You've got any weird genetic history? And they're like, well, I take Adderall. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And, I mean, their HRV was probably, I would say, 20 to 30 points lower than most other people in a similar situation.
That's what we saw as well. And I think it's a lot like birth control. It's so common, people don't even think about it's one of their meds,
Yeah.
That's exactly what I saw. Because, as we're doing a little bit of pilot work, one of the potential subjects actually said, oh, yeah, well, there is the Adderall I'm on for, ADHD. And I'm like, whoa, well, that explains it, because either that or our equipment is busted because your numbers are in the toilet, So I guess practical tip, right, for listeners, if you are on an ADHD med like Adderall, you've got to really make some proactive movements in your life to try to recover, because you are going to be at a deficit when it comes to that. You're just on, fight or flight overdrive, like all the time. That's how they work. So.
Yeah, and I found that, obviously working with their physician, it's very hard to get people off of it. And it's also, I think, because of the neurologic association that, some people I think may have a very good reason they're on it. I think it's probably abused by a lot of other people. But it does work to have you focus because of what it does. But then I think people get in the habit of that's the only time that they can focus by using it. So they kind of build up that sort of skill set of using it to focus. And that, takes a while to kind of unwire some of that stuff.
Right. Yep. Okay, I have one last bit. This is a mail from Matt. He says, I'm an avid listener who's sadly running out of episodes to listen to. I believe a couple times you've mentioned wishing you could open your lectures up to the general public. Have you thought about Coursera or some of these other online offerings? I've taken courses on these sorts of websites to close some of my knowledge gaps. When I shifted gears from my BS in biology to my master's in engineering. Well, he's your kind of guy, Mike.
Yeah.
So he got some really good info doing some of these things. Now, let me just offer this. Last year, I mentioned that I teach an completely online summer class. It's a basic, straight-up sports nutrition class. It talks about some of the cell machinery and how nutrients interact. It's the kind of thing where I mentioned it online because so often people say, what's a good book that I should start with, when it comes to nutrition or training or whatever. And my usual response is very curmudgeonly, which is, listen, son, you need to get yourself a good basic, learn the basics. Because when I talk to people in the field, and I bet you guys could echo this, they're really well read on certain things, and they can have a very advanced conversation. But if you carry on the conversation for any length of time, they'll say something that makes you wince a little, like, ooh, yeah, that's not how that works. You're really on the ball with this, but this over here, a little bit of confusion there maybe. So that's what a course like this does, or like a kind of a nutrition 101 textbook. I'm always pushing the Mill Williams, sports nutrition textbook, because it's basic enough to lay down some structure for you, some foundation, but then every chapter ramps up into a very recent literature review. Like if you want to know what's happening with creatine or energy drinks or whatever. It's just a really good book. Anyway, I'm teaching that online summer class again, but there's been some frustration. Last year, 5 people asked, and I checked with the registrar, and they're like, no, you have to actually go through the full admissions process at the university to take this one course. And I said, even if it's for personal enrichment, these guys they're not going to go dig up their ACT scores from 20 years ago, or write you an essay, or, the usual college admission thing, the things that are worthwhile if you're going to stay at a university for 4 or 5 years, but probably not so worthwhile if you want to take a summer class for 4 or 5 weeks. So, that looks like it's actually changed this year. I've been talking to some people in admissions and the registrar. If you're interested, send me an email, lawnman7@hotmail.com, and then along with Matt, maybe we can get you in the summer course. Here's the important thing. This is college credit at a private school, so it's not going to be cheap. We're not talking about $200 for a weekend cert. This is a 6-week university course for actual college credit. But if you're interested, I think I've actually made some progress in reducing the barriers, so if you want to spend the money and get college credit, you could do it as a non-degree seeking student, and they're not going to make you do something like, go retake the ACT or write an essay or pull up your transcripts from God knows where, right? If you're a student somewhere else, it's actually quite easy. You could take it as a transient student, just kind of enrolled in one place and taking it somewhere else. That part's easy. But if you're not enrolled anywhere right now and you're not a student, but you want to lay down some basics, I'm going to toss that out and just see. Like I said, I had to essentially turn away 5 people last year because I wasn't going to expect them to go through this, full admissions process to take a summer class. So hopefully we've made some progress, and if you're interested, let me know. And it's totally online. It's asynchronous. You do it on your own time and all that kind of stuff. But it's more that, like I said, it's lay down the basics. We literally march through the different nutrients, right? So, carbs, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, water, and then some special topics like supplements, fat loss and muscle gain, that kind of stuff. If you're interested, let me know with an email, lawnman7@hotmail.com, and we'll see what we can do. Like I said, this would be for the people who are financially stable and they want credit for an actual university course. So it's not quite the same as a certification, but I do want to try to open this up and reduce barriers to the average person because, like I said, in the fitness field, how many really bad certs are offered by just these, brainless gurus making up their own systems and their own rules, and it's not how it's, that's not how it works. Anyway, I thought I would toss that out.
Yeah, I just have 2 shameless plugs on that I do teach for Rocky Mountain University, so they do have a really good program that's online for health promotion and in the fitness field. That's very related to strength and conditioning. Again, I teach for them. I don't make any money if you sign up there or not, but I think their enrollment closes at the end of this month. So if people are interested in that, they can just look at it online. And then I do teach a 1-year-long course with the Carrick Institute that's 4 modules. And it's basically a 300 graduate level credit course through them, all on exercise physiology, how to use everything from muscle to cardiac to strength to neurology to nutrition. So it's myself and then Dr. Kenneth J. and Dr. Freddie Garcia and a few other people from there that are teaching it. And that first course, I think, starts this summer, but I think you may have to be enrolled before that. And last thing on that is that most of that is online. It's a flipped classroom, so you can do all of it online.
Yeah.
And then we've got 3 days over the 4 times over the year where you come in and do all the lab stuff in 3 days.
Wow, a year long, you said.
Yeah, it's a year-long program, but they can take just 1 module if they want. But the whole course is over the course of a year. So you'll do all the stuff on, say, muscle skeletal. That'll be all online, and then there'll be a 3-day at the end of that one where we'll walk you through a lot of the assessments and the testing and everything like that. So it works out really good because when Kenneth and I were primarily putting the course together, we wanted something that if we had to go back and redo, everything for exercise phys, but make it practical for a lot of people that, work as coaches and trainers and maybe DCs and PTs, what would we include?
Right.
And we've got, all the original reference material. We've got the Ketch and McCardle book. And so it's a legitimate, graduate level course.
Right. Yeah. Obviously, my stuff is going to be very nutrition specific. Right. So,
yeah.
But yeah. And you know what? These are online offerings. It makes me think about what Phil has long said, which is, and IronRadio does it. I mean, we're partly guilty that we give information for free. And the average person expects fitness and nutrition information in our field for free. Oh, hey, can you help me gain weight? And you would never go to a physical therapist. They'd look at you like they wouldn't even, justify the comment with a response. They'd be like, well, you're not in my care. You're not being treated by me. No, I'm not going to help you rehab for free. Yeah. Or a lawyer or pick a professional. But in our field, people want it for free, man. And we're talking about university credit for this stuff. So, yes, it's not completely free, and it's not just a weekend, So, for those of you who want it, there are some options, I guess. How about that? All right. That's all I've got. Anything happen in the industry for you guys?
JP squatted 1,008 yesterday, I think.
Nice.
Getting ready for the current U.S. Open, so he's a month out.
Oh. God. You mean, was that in your gym or out your direction?
No, it's down in Kansas City, so about an hour away from me. And then we got 17 lifters coming to a meet in 2 weeks. And Big Brian squatted 835 for, what did he squat? 835 for a double, no wraps, no belt, no nothing.
Oh, my God.
Oh, jeez.
So, yeah, he's looking to put up big weights. He pulled 900 with straps, so now we got to do it without it. Straps and no belt, 900 deadlift. And 535 for a double on bench. So he's have a good meet.
Big numbers.
Yeah, there's some stuff coming up, but
no, that's cool. Times. That double, that reminds me. I saw the video that you posted of Kirk.
Yeah,
at the end, he doubles. What was it? 1,000 plus, right?
Yep.
And then the handler, the people go to get the bar, and he goes, "Leave it! I want to hold it. I want to stand with it." And I'm like,
"Yeah,
this guy's intense."
Yes.
So, okay. Let's go to break then. When we'll come back, we're going to discuss direct arm work across different strength sports, and maybe you can glean something from that.
Hey listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle, oh, you poor meathead, all that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You could simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that, and I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book, but that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population, to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more. That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
All right, folks, we're back. It's Phil and Mike and Lonnie, and we are going to discuss direct arm work. It's a kind of thing that over the years I've heard some people sort of not be that excited about it. You know, it's like, why are you spending lots of time curling in the squat rack, bro? You know, stuff like that, and the kind of usual almost insults that get thrown around about direct arm work, but obviously there's a place for it. I would argue that most lifters do some direct arm work. We touched on some of the basic arm anatomy a couple of months ago when we talked about making stubborn arms grow, but I do think it's important to understand that not just like general stuff like forearm flexors and extensors, or the idea that you've got a brachialis lying under your biceps, or a brachioradialis that sort of in a way connects your humerus to your forearm bones there. And again, I'm not going to go into a gory discussion, radius and ulna and this and that, but there are some big players here like the biceps, the triceps, the brachialis, brachioradialis, and different movements address them, and that sort of thing. So I have some questions for you guys. Let's start with Phil. Why would a power lifter or someone in strongman, Highland Games, whatever it might be, why might they do direct arm work?
Oh, numerous reasons. We do a lot of it at the end of our workouts, and a lot of it's just like hypertrophy based. Mm-hmm. A lot of it might be, I'll just be like, okay, 100 curls with a barbell. For powerlifting, bicep work helps bracing on the bench press a lot. There's no arguing that. I mean, if you can control the descent a little better. And we do so much tricep work. We've talked about it before. You can only, if an opposing muscle group is lacking, that other muscle group will just stop getting stronger at some point. Mm-hmm. So to be a little balanced. things like that. Strongman, I think you're seeing it more and more people are doing it because to help aid against the bicep tears, the tendon tears.
Yeah.
So strengthening the bicep tendons and things like that. There were a lot of people just not doing it at all, and lots of bicep tears happening. So it's definitely not as much of a vanity exercise as it is a performance exercise, but and it's kind of an afterthought one too.
Right.
So it's just, I need to get some in, so I'm going to pick up this barbell and just curl it 100 times. And I stole that from Derek Poundstone was doing that. He'd just end his workouts with 100 curls with a barbell, just an empty bar, 45 pounds. So, but I mean, it's work that you get in. So, usually for health reasons, I guess, so we don't blow something, or for performance reasons, so we can kind of stay balanced out. Have a better eccentric on the bench press and better stabilizing. I mean, if you got really weak biceps and you're trying to bench 400, 500 pounds, it's probably going to be all over the place. You need to be able to stabilize that load with your upper arm. So, and the bicep is a player in stabilizing the upper arm.
Yeah.
So,
to me, I would think, I mean, that's the connector between your big, core, like torso muscle groups, and like if you're going to hold a caber or a barbell, or I mean, you transfer the energy through those muscles, and you can't have bean pole arms and expect to cash in fully on those big pecs and lats and traps, right? I mean,
I've never seen somebody bench 600 pounds that had small arms, that had small biceps. So, I mean, a lot of the work we get in, now, undoubtedly we do tons of rowing, so we get a lot of bicep work in there. Tons of bent over rows and ring rows and chin ups and things like that. And I mean, while it's not direct bicep work, the arm is bending under load, so the biceps are working. So, we get a lot more that way too. So I suppose we do a lot more than we lead on, but we do some direct arm work and some, of course, direct tricep work. So,
right. Yeah, we'll get to exercise choices in just a bit. Mike, what about your thoughts as far as, usefulness of direct arm work in your clients or yourself?
Yeah, I think it's useful. I mean, very much for the same reasons Phil stated. I know I'm incredibly guilty of not doing much direct arm work off and on, and for quite a while I didn't probably do much of any direct arm work. I mean, I did chin-ups and rows and that kind of stuff, but I did some grip stuff, but I wouldn't do anything bicep-y related. And then when I was doing more strongman stuff, especially stones and tires, I'm like, similar to Phil, and I know Phil's had some bicep issues in the past, could speak more directly to this. I look and I'm like, wow, my tendon insert in my bicep is sore. Oh.
Yeah, not good.
I didn't rip anything. I didn't do anything bad to it. But you get that deep soreness, kind of right at the end of the muscle belly. And I'm looking at what I'm doing on, stones and everything else. I'm like, oh, so maybe throwing in some direct bicep work is probably a good idea, because it's that, especially if something happens where you slip on a stone and you're trying to still grab it on its way down, that super heavy eccentric, or people miss on a tire and they've got their hands on the inside. Tires are the worst because the load's just so massive in that kind of weak position. But I'm like, I should probably do a little bit more work there. And then it also helped. I had a little bit of tendinosis in the back of my tricep insertion. So once I started doing just lighter direct arm work, then that all went away. Maybe it's a blood flow. Maybe it's just more of a work issue. So I think for stuff like that, it's definitely helpful. For clients I have, it just depends on what their goals are. If they've never done any of it, we'll probably, toss them in. If their overall body composition, I just kind of add it into what they feel like they want. Obviously, if they're doing physique or something like that, it's going to be a little bit different.
Right on. No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, I actually knew a guy, Jim, up in Minnesota there at the boardwalk where I would train.
Yeah.
And he said he actually blew a biceps doing heavy preacher curls, And so often you hear, in my experience, it's more like what happened to Phil, which is a big pull, a big deadlift, and you blow it like that. Because, I mean, as far as mass goes, your biceps and triceps just, no wonder you would just want some hypertrophy work, like Phil said, because your lats, your traps are such huge muscles, and if you're going to do a deadlift, it's such a compound, your glutes and quads, I mean, they are some little guys in a lineup of giant, meaty, slabs of muscle. So you would think that just the general hypertrophy, would be good. But, what you're talking about, like the insertion, biceps insertion, that aponeurosis, that sheet. You like to think that's, that's going to make that whole thing stronger and better. It's like a whole sheet there at the insertion of the biceps. But, that starts to get really tender. That would make me nervous, too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think where people don't understand, like bicep tears are usually, in the 99% of the time, it's not from like trying to curl a heavy load. It's when your arm gets straightened under the load.
Yep.
So, and that's like the two ones I've done were an Atlas stone and a tire. The Atlas stone, you just can't pick them up without a bent arm. So they're just inherently dangerous. But the tire I just messed up, and I was being sloppy, and I picked it up on a bent arm, and the 500-pound tire was stronger than I can curl, apparently. So.
Well, right. Yeah.
Go figure.
On a whim. Yeah. For sure.
So.
Okay, a couple of other things. How about if you can offer, Phil, a good arm, like a favorite arm exercise, and then something that's bad. Like, for example, I like standing barbell curls, or dumbbell curls because I can supinate. A lot of times, though, they'll make fun of triceps movement like a kickback, right? And so I can maybe address some of that, like what makes one good. Why, in your opinion, do people think kickbacks are bad? Anything like that.
Honestly, the most we use is a barbell curl, just a standing barbell curl, and we use that the most. I think where people mess that exercise up is they start heaving it around and treating it like it's a freaking a massive, like a primary movement. And I'm going to get this load any way I can. And I'd rather see somebody just do it nice and controlled. And literally, we're not going for PRs here. We're going for building some tissue and some tendon strength. And if you're just heaving it around like crazy, you're probably doing the opposite.
Missing the point.
To your tendons.
Yeah,
you're missing the point. God, a bad bicep exercise.
Or triceps, either way. Yeah.
Yeah, tricep kickback, I think, is the one that comes to mind. I mean, it's just inherently kind of ineffective. But
why do you think that is? Is it just because you can't use any load?
Through most of the movement, you're not doing much. From the bottom end, at least halfway up, you're hardly doing anything just because of the angle of the lift. So it's that top end from about halfway up to lockout. Lockout's where you're going to get the biggest lever arm, But it just demands not much load, and I just don't think it's very effective. Whereas I can get a cable or something like that, and I'm loaded through the whole movement.
Yeah, tension throughout.
Yeah, you have tension through the whole movement. Whereas, and usually we're going to be the weakest. You're going to be the strongest naturally at near lockout, anyways. So you're not attacking that weak area of the move hardly at all. When my arm is in complete flexion, is where I need to get stronger generally in my triceps.
Yep.
And we're ignoring that with a tricep kickback. Whereas if I use a cable, I can load it up right from the start, and I'm hitting that weak area, just like on any lift. I mean, the bottom of the squat is generally where people are going to suck. So we can stroke their ego by, using really heavy band tension or something like that, to where it's super light in the bottom and then really heavy at the top. Well, of course they're going to move a lot of weight. They're not attacking that weak area at all. So yeah, I'd probably go towards that one. I mean. So
yeah, I agree very much with the whole idea. The reason I like lying skull crushers, or lying triceps extensions, is your arms are in that more like flexed forward position. Yes. You can feel that stretch, and when you do a kickback, your upper arm, your humerus is in like an extended position.
Yes.
Yeah, half the movement's gone.
Yes.
Mike, what about you? Good and bad recommendations?
Yeah, I think for tricep stuff, I think the kickback is, I would say, almost pretty worthless unless you're extremely hyper vigilant about technique. And even then, I think you're probably better off just doing something else. Because if you watch almost anyone do it in the gym, the angle of the humerus basically drops down further and further. So when you hit that full extension, you're not all the way even up at the top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? You basically you made the exercise quote unquote easier by relieving the main muscle of some of the work.
Mm-hmm.
So And even then, if you're doing it right, loads are going to be pretty light, just as Phil was saying, because of the way the exercise is designed. I like cables a lot better for that because you can get more constant tension throughout. Skull crushers, I always find they bug my elbows.
They are hard on your elbows.
A decline, and I can keep the humerus basically straight up, that seems to relieve a lot of elbow issues for most people. So that may be an option they can play around with. I do really like the standing bicep curl with just a bar. I think that's a very underrated exercise if you're super strict about how you do it. So I'll even have people posterior pelvic tilt because I want their low back to be a little bit more neutral. I'm trying to get them out of that, extension position and them leaning back so much. Or you can get even weirder and just put them up against a rack or against the wall so that they can't move their upper body back. And it's crazy how much of a difference that'll make for people just in terms of weight. And another version of that, once they get good at that, is you can do what's called, I think Vince Gironda had this called the drag curl. You're basically bringing your humerus, your upper arm back so that the bar is touching your torso all the way up. So you're taking that long head of the bicep and you're stretching that all the way across the shoulder, and then you're having it work from the bottom position.
I have actually found that drag curls, sometimes if my elbows are acting up in any way, I can still do some drag curls without further irritating everything, So,
yeah, I found that too.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake with all this direct arm work stuff is people let their ego get a hold of them, and they're wanting to move weight instead of. It's really not about that.
It's not a performance. It's not a performance move. Yeah.
So yeah.
Agreed.
And that can be hard for a performance athlete to do.
Right.
So.
Yep. Order in the workout. I guess that goes without saying, but this is generally stuff you're going to do at the end. I can't imagine why you would do arm work before you did performance lifts. Right?
Yeah, the only time I do it is a little bit. Maybe we do with like a light band or something in a general warm up. Just to get things warmed up.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be hard. It's going to be throwing a bunch of reps in just get things warmed up. So.
Yeah, makes sense. My last one. Let's start with Phil. What have you done this week? Like, let's just look into your playbook a little bit. Have you done any direct arm this week, and what was it?
Eating. No, but I'm 2 weeks out from a meet, so literally all I'm doing is like I pulled some deadlifts up to 650 for a double, and then I'm going to go squat 650 today and bench, and that's it. That's all I will do.
Yeah,
so I'm like doing no assistance work. So
right on. Okay, Mike, have you done anything direct arm work?
Not actually this week. So I'm down in South Padre, Texas. I've been kiteboarding the past couple of days, and then previous to that, I was with Adam Glass in Dallas. So we went to the gym with him one day, and we actually did some super old school Pete Sisko, John Little static contraction training, which is very heavy, kind of partial end range of motion type stuff. We did do a little bit of bicep work at the very end of that, which we've never done that. It's an interesting experience to do that. I'm still on the fence if it transfers a lot to powerlifting because that's more of a full range of motion. But again, it all depends on what your goals are and what you're trying to do. So Adam does a lot of grip stuff and does a lot of crazy stuff like bending like thick wrenches and stuff like that, where it is very much an end range of motion where you have to be ungodly strong there too. Right. But yeah, previous to that, the week before, I just did some plate curls, did some V-bar work, and I guess I'd say more kind of oddball kind of grip-based stuff.
Right on. Yeah, I did I broke a rule a little bit, and I did a little bit heavier just Scott curls. Sometimes I just wanted to feel the tension. I just felt like I wanted to get a little sore and that sort of thing. You know what, though? We're being remiss about any kind of grip stuff. When we talk about direct arm work, we focus a lot on upper arm, of course. Just maybe a quick recommendation from each of you about, what might you suggest for improving grip? Something forearm related or...
Depends on what you're trying to do. Like I can tell you just from experience that crushing grip is a lot different than locking grip. Like I don't have that great of crushing grip, but I can hang on. I've picked up 900 pounds on a bar. But I have guys that can't pick up near that, but they can crush, like they can close grippers and things like that. So it depends on what you're looking to do. With my athletes, most of the time it's not crushing grip, so we'll do a lot of farmers and things like that. So they just need to hold on to things. So.
Yeah, that's a favorite for me too. I like farmer stuff. I never had much of a grip really. Even when I used to do like low rack pulls, like I could do up to about 405 with a mixed grip. I mean, I'm sorry, that's the best I could do. And because I didn't want to, if I went heavier than that, I would actually use straps. And I know that's blasphemous for power lifters, but I wanted to be able to get enough weight on my traps and my back, with some of those low rack pulls. But and that's when I started thinking maybe I should do some direct forearm work, because literally I have a hard time, hoisting up a 495 on the bar, like with some kind of pulls. And I should be able to hold on to that. You would think at least for a couple of reps. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure it's an issue for some people. Mike, I know you've even done competitions with this kind of stuff. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so usually with most people, the three things I have them look at are, like Phil was saying, some type of hold. And this could be basically just taking their deadlift. The simple one I do is, okay, no straps, chalk, and all your deadlifts now are both palms down only. So yes, your grip's going to be limited. But if you're pulling, say, 405 and both palms down, you can barely get 245. That's a massive difference that we need to work on. And most people aren't that bad. But so that's probably the biggest one there. Some type of farmers are great. You can get into just isometric holds. I don't find that grippers transfer worth a crap for most people, because closing a gripper is a very kind of specialized thing in how you set it and everything else. I don't find a lot of transfer. I find that's kind of a separate skill. The other one is a pinch grip. So a lot of times the thumb is the weakest part of your other fingers. So just take like two 25s or 35s or 45s, put them together, put both hands on it with like a pinch grip, and then just deadlift it. If you want to get fancy, take two 25s, try to do that with one hand. There's a whole bunch of different variations, but open palm kind of like pinch grip to get that thumb to work again. And the last one that very few people do is kind of the contra spec to the crushing grip is open palm work. And the best one I like for that is a plate curl. So take like a small plate, like flip your hand over like you're going to curl it, set it in your open hand, and then wrap your thumb on top. So at the bottom, your thumb has to hold super hard to hold it, and then you're basically curling it with your hand open and your thumb on top. What you find is that you're stressing the open hand and the wrist. And it's pretty rare that even guys who are really strong could walk into a gym and do reps with just a 25. So I found that works pretty well too, to hit the whole hand and wrist and everything else.
It would be interesting to put some electrodes on your forearm and look at the EMG of individual muscles in these different types of grip.
Yeah.
And what's actually getting activated, how different it is. Like you guys said, they're so specific in the kind of grip. So.
Yeah, I think in the grippers, I think what you'll find is those basically the muscles that are really controlling that thumb and stuff are probably more active than what you find in just crushing or supportive grip.
Yeah.
Supportive grip, a lot of times it's the thumb being able to lock to the index. And then also people forget the pinky. So if you look at the calluses on your hand, that'll give you a pretty good idea of which fingers are weaker, because the callus is the shear stress of the bar getting ripped through your hand. And if I look at calluses on people, and like if their ring finger has a massive callus more than the rest of them, now I'm thinking there may be something goofy going on with that finger.
Yeah, I'm looking at my hands right now. My ring finger and pinky have bigger calluses than the other two fingers. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's pretty normal, but once they start getting super excessive, then I'm thinking, they're getting super weak towards that end.
Okay, good stuff. All right, everyone. Well, we're going to cut it there because we have some more recording to do. But some tips, I think, at least as far as direct arm work. It is more controversial than I would have thought, earlier in my career. Like I said, some people don't do it much and that sort of thing. And obviously depends on your goals and the stage of your training. I can see why Phil's not doing that right now, to be honest. He's not trying to look swole or build mass. He's trying to, be good at his sport. So, all right. I guess that'll be it then. Until next week.
See ya.
Hey listeners, Have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry. And they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the store, so we try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, you know is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.